My name is Rachel, though most people call me Ray. I'm 31 years old, and before you judge me too quickly, I need you to know that what I'm about to tell you is not some neat little story where the heroine gets everything she wants. This is messy, this is ugly, and it's the kind of thing that makes you question who you can trust, even when that person has been sitting at your dinner table for years, laughing with you, clinking glasses with you, and whispering secrets in your ear like sisters. Before I dive in, let me ask, where are you watching from right now? I always wonder how far my story might travel. And if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe, because trust me, you're not going to want to miss how this ends. Now, let me rewind the clock a little. When I was 24, I met Daniel, the man who would later become my husband. He wasn't perfect, but to me, he felt close. Tall, charming in a kind of quiet way, and the kind of man who could make you feel like you were the only person in the room. We met through work, of all places. I was an assistant at a marketing firm, and he was the big-shot consultant they'd hired to pull our sinking project out of the mud. I remember the first time I saw him walk into the conference room with that confident stride and pressed shirt. I thought, well, damn, that's trouble. Trouble, and yet irresistible. We started dating almost instantly, and within 2 years, we were married. My best friend Claire was my maid of honor. That detail will matter more than I wish it did. At the time, though, I couldn't imagine my life without her by my side. Claire had been with me through everything. Heartbreaks, late-night drunken crying sessions, family drama, you name it. She was the one who always picked up the phone no matter the hour. Daniel used to joke that I loved Claire as much as I loved him, and maybe in some ways, he was right. She wasn't just a friend, she was family. For the first few years of marriage, life felt like it had finally balanced out. We had a modest home, a shared bank account, plans for the future. The boring kind of happiness you don't realize. You'll miss until it's gone. And Claire? She was always around. Always. At first, I liked it. Daniel liked it too, or at least he acted like he did. We were the trio. Weekend barbecues, game nights, spontaneous trips to the lake. If you had told me then that Claire would be the one to drive a knife so deep into my back I'd never look at friendship the same way again, I would have laughed. But the thing about betrayal is, it doesn't walk in wearing a mask. It wears the same smile you've seen 1,000 times. The first crack in the glass came so quietly I almost ignored it. I walked into the kitchen late one night after a long day, and there they were, Claire and Daniel, sitting closer than I would have liked on the couch, whispering about something I couldn't quite catch. They pulled apart quickly when I entered, both flashing me those innocent, oh you just missed it smiles. I told myself it was nothing, that I was being paranoid. Because who wants to believe the two people you trust most could ever betray you? But that night, lying in bed, staring at the ceiling fan spinning shadows across the walls, a thought burned in the back of my mind. What were they whispering about? The whisper turned into a seed, and the seed grew roots. Over the weeks, I started noticing more things. Claire's hand brushing Daniel's arm a little too long when she laughed. Daniel defending Claire in arguments that had nothing to do with him. Texts between them at odd hours. Work memes, they claimed. I tried to swallow it down, to tell myself I was imagining patterns where none existed. But deep down, I knew, thigh. Scariest part wasn't what I saw. It was how natural it looked, like they'd been rehearsing behind my back until the chemistry between them was smooth enough to pass as friendly banter. I wanted to believe my marriage was stronger than my doubts. I wanted to believe Claire valued me more than whatever this was. But what happened next left me speechless. The night Samantha canceled on me and Daniel went for his so-called late run, I sat alone in the kitchen, staring at the empty wine glass in front of me. My gut twisted with a kind of nervous energy I couldn't shake. Maybe it was paranoia. Maybe I was connecting dots that didn't exist. But deep down, I already knew I wasn't crazy. The next morning, Daniel came home from work later than usual. His hair was damp like he'd showered somewhere else. When I asked about it, he chuckled, kissed my forehead, and said, "Gym showers, babe. Don't be jealous." Jealous. That word echoed in my mind all day. I had never once accused him of cheating, never questioned his loyalty, never doubted him. Not seriously. But suddenly, I was being painted as the paranoid wife, the insecure one, the nag, and I hated it. That night, Samantha called me. Her voice was cheerful, maybe a little too cheerful. She rambled on about work deadlines, her boss being a jerk, the usual small talk, but I found myself listening not to her words, but to her pauses. The little gaps in her sentences where she seemed to be measuring what she said. My best friend never measured her words with me. "You okay, Sam?" I asked finally, breaking her rhythm. "Of course. Why wouldn't I be?" she answered quickly, almost defensively. It wasn't much, but it was enough to plant another seed of doubt. About a week later, I decided to test something. Daniel had mentioned he was working late, so I invited Samantha over for dinner. She hesitated at first, another red flag, but eventually said yes. I made lasagna, her favorite, and poured us both a glass of wine. She was quiet at first, fidgeting with her fork, avoiding eye contact. It wasn't until halfway through the meal that she finally relaxed. We laughed, like we used to. She told me about a new guy at her office who wouldn't stop flirting with her, and I teased her about giving him a chance. For a moment, it felt like old times. But then, my phone buzzed on the counter. A text from Daniel. "Traffic. Be home later than planned." I glanced up at Samantha. She had seen the notification, and for the briefest second, her smile faltered. Just a flicker, but enough to confirm my darkest suspicions. She knew something I didn't. The weeks dragged on, and with every small lie, every mismatched excuse, I felt myself unraveling. I started noticing how often Daniel complimented Samantha, sometimes in ways he didn't with me anymore. The curve of her new haircut, the way she laughed, even the perfume she wore. He said once it smelled like summer evenings. And every time, I bit my tongue so hard I tasted blood. But it wasn't just Daniel. Samantha, too, began pulling away from me in small, calculated ways. She canceled plans more often, avoided spending the night at my place like she used to, and even stopped sharing her usual day-to-day details. Our friendship had gone from constant chatter to stiff, polite conversations. It was like she was building a wall between us, brick by brick. One Saturday morning, I called her, just wanting to talk. Her phone went straight to voicemail. A few hours later, I texted her. No reply. That evening, Daniel said he was heading out for a quick errand. And wouldn't you know it? The same pattern repeated. Her silence, his absence, my unraveling. That was when I knew. I wasn't paranoid. I wasn't crazy. Something was happening behind my back, but how could I prove it? I started doing things I never thought I would. Like checking the mileage on Daniel's car, memorizing the number on Samantha's parking spot, even driving past her apartment late at night to see if his truck was there. Once, it was. I remember gripping the steering, wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. My breath came in short, uneven bursts. Part of me wanted to march upstairs, pound on her door, and catch them in the act. But another part of me, maybe the stronger part, wanted to wait, to collect evidence, to be absolutely certain before I blew my entire life apart. Because once the truth came out, there would be no going back. One evening, Daniel left his laptop open on the dining table. He was in the shower, humming like nothing in the world was wrong. My hands shook as I sat down in front of it. I wasn't the kind of wife who snooped, but by then, that version of me was already gone. I clicked open his messages, and there it was, a thread labeled Sammy. My chest tightened as I scrolled. Most of the recent texts were deleted, but a few remained. Enough to send my stomach into freefall. Can't stop thinking about last night. Wish I could stay longer, but she'll notice. Soon. The word soon burned itself into my brain. Soon. What? Soon. He'd leave. Me? Soon she'd replace me? Soon my entire life would shatter? I didn't know. But I knew one thing for certain. This wasn't just in my head anymore. Something real, something ugly, was happening right under my nose, and I was finally ready to find out exactly what. But the way I discovered the truth? That was worse than anything I could have imagined. After finding those messages, my world tilted on its axis. The words blurred on the screen as I sat there, frozen, listening to the sound of Daniel's shower upstairs. Every drop of water hitting the tile felt like a countdown to the moment my marriage would detonate. I wanted to scream, to storm into the bathroom and demand answers. But instead, I quietly closed the laptop, pushed the chair back, and forced myself to breathe. Confronting him then would only give him time to twist the story, to delete evidence, to make me question myself all over again. No, I needed to be smarter than that. The very next day, I bought a small, discreet voice recorder online. I never imagined I'd be the type of woman to spy on her husband, but here I was, waiting for a package like it was my salvation. I hid it in the bookshelf in our living room, right where Daniel usually sat to take his calls. And soon enough, it paid off. 3 nights later, I heard it, his voice low and careful. She doesn't suspect anything. I'm just saying I'll figure it out. Give me time. My pulse pounded in my ears as I crouched in the hallway, listening. There was a pause. Then Samantha's laughter trickled through the receiver. Her voice. In my living room. I felt sick. She said something about last weekend, about how she wished they could have stayed in bed longer. My stomach twisted so violently, I thought I might actually vomit right there on the hardwood floor. There it was. Proof. The love of my life and my so-called best friend whispering secrets behind my back. I thought I'd cry. Instead, I felt empty. That night, I lay awake beside Daniel, staring at the ceiling while he snored softly, completely unaware that I knew everything. My mind raced with every memory. The wedding day where Samantha had stood beside me in a matching dress, smiling, for photos. The birthday parties she planned for me. The nights she held me when I cried about Daniel working too late. All of it. Every laugh, every hug, every "I love you." Had it all been a lie? The next morning, I tested him. "Hey," I said casually over coffee. "Sam called me last night. Said she's been lonely lately. Maybe I'll invite her over this weekend." Daniel nearly choked on his drink. "Really? I don't know if that's a good idea. She's probably busy." I stared at him, forcing a smile. Busy doing what? She doesn't have anyone else. His eyes flicked away, just for a second, but I saw it. That tiny flash of panic he couldn't quite hide, and that was all I needed. From then on, I became an actress. I played the role of the clueless wife while carefully tracking every move they made. I checked phone records, followed credit card receipts, even drove past a hotel once when Daniel claimed he was working late. And there they were, his truck parked in the lot, Samantha's red sedan 2 spaces over. My heart pounded so hard I thought my chest might split open. I gripped the steering wheel, debating whether to march inside and blow their little secret wide open, but I didn't. Not yet. Because now, I wanted revenge. I started documenting everything. Screenshots of messages, recordings of phone calls, photos of their cars parked side by side. Every breadcrumb they thought they'd hidden, I collected. I built a case like a detective preparing for trial. Meanwhile, Daniel grew bolder. He started staying out later, leaving earlier, even forgetting to erase some of his messages. Samantha grew colder, too. Her excuses for avoiding me became so flimsy it was insulting. "Sorry, Ellie. I can't come by tonight. Work's crazy, but..." Then I'd see her tagged at a bar on Instagram, laughing with friends. The audacity of it all. It lit a fire inside me. Then came the night it all boiled over. Daniel had just come home from working late. He reeked faintly of Samantha's perfume, the same one he once said smelled like summer evenings. I stood in the kitchen, clutching a knife as I chopped vegetables for dinner. My hands trembled, but not from fear, from rage. He walked in, kissed my cheek and said, "Smells good, babe." And something inside me snapped. "Who is she, Daniel?" I asked, my voice calm but deadly. He froze. The color drained from his face. "What are you talking about?" I set the knife down slowly, meeting his eyes. "Don't play dumb with me." "I know." He opened his mouth, closed it, then stammered, "Ellie, you're imagining things. You've been stressed? Don't you dare gaslight me." I cut him off, my voice shaking with fury. "I know it's Sam." The silence that followed was deafening. His lips parted, but no words came out. And in that silence, I had my answer. I wish I could tell you I cried, that I broke down in a flood of grief. But I didn't. I laughed. I laughed so hard I had to grip the counter for balance. Because in that moment, the absurdity of it all, the betrayal, the lies, the sheer audacity, hit me like a tidal wave. And Daniel just stood there, watching me unravel, probably wondering if I'd lost my mind. But no, I hadn't lost my mind. Had finally found my clarity. And that clarity told me one thing. If Samantha thought she could steal my husband and get away with it, she had no idea who she was dealing with. Because I wasn't going to just walk away. I was going to make them both regret ever underestimating me. But the way I executed my plan, even I didn't expect how perfectly it would fall into place. The night I confronted Daniel should have been enough. His silence said it all. But betrayal has a way of gnawing at you, of whispering in your ear until you can't breathe without tasting the bitterness of it. I thought I was prepared for the truth. I wasn't. 2 days later, Samantha showed up at my door. No warning, no text beforehand, just a knock that echoed through the house like a gunshot. When I opened it, there she was, my best friend, my maid of honor, the woman who had been closer to me than a sister. She wore her usual smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Ellie," she said softly, like we were still friends, like she hadn't just shattered my entire world. I stepped aside, letting her in. My hands trembled as I poured us both coffee, the ritual we had done 1,000 times before. But the air was different now, thicker, heavier. We sat at the kitchen table, the silence stretching until it suffocated me. Finally, I said, "How long?" Her eyes darted up. "What?" "Don't play dumb, Sam. How long have you been sleeping with my husband?" The mug slipped from her fingers and shattered against the floor. Coffee splashed across the tiles, dark and messy, like blood, spreading from a wound. She didn't even move to clean it up. Instead, she whispered, "Ellie, please." But that was enough. That was my confirmation. I stood, my chair scraping against the floor. My chest burned as if all the air had been ripped out of the room. "You? We're supposed to be my best friend," I spat, my voice breaking. "You stood beside me at my wedding. You promised me you'd always have my back." Her lips quivered. "I never meant for it to happen." "Don't you dare!" I cut her off, tears stinging my eyes. "Don't you dare sit here and pretend you never meant for it to happen. You made a choice. Every single time you chose him over me." The kitchen spun. The betrayal wasn't just about Daniel. It was about her, about the years of trust, the secrets I had shared, the sisterhood I thought we had. She hadn't just stolen my husband. She had stolen my faith in people. And yet, she had the audacity to cry. "Ellie, I love him," she whispered. Her voice so fragile it made me want to break something. Those 4 words sliced through me sharper than any knife. She didn't say I'm sorry. She didn't say it was a mistake. She said I love him. I lost it. I screamed. I cursed. I hurled the remaining coffee mug against the wall until it shattered into jagged pieces. My throat ached from the sound, but I didn't care. Years of friendship, of laughter, of loyalty. It all poured out of me in one violent eruption. She just sat there, tears running down her cheeks, as if she was the victim, as if she hadn't been the one sneaking into my bed when I wasn't looking. When I finally stopped, my chest heaving, she whispered, "Ellie, you're strong. You'll move on. But Daniel, he needs me." That was it. That was the nail in the coffin. Later that night, I confronted Daniel again. No more games, no more pretending. Threw the evidence at him, the photos, the recordings, the messages. He sat on the couch, his face pale, his hands trembling as he realized the walls were closing in. "Say something," I demanded, my voice raw. But what could he say? He didn't deny it this time. He didn't beg for forgiveness. He just sat there, staring at me with empty eyes, and finally muttered, "I didn't mean for it to get this far." That line, that pathetic excuse, as if betrayal had an expiration date, as if sleeping with my best friend once would have been excusable, but multiple times. That was too far. I looked at him, the man I had built a life with, and I felt nothing but disgust. For days after, I was numb. I walked through the house like a ghost, going through the motions of life while my marriage rotted from the inside out. I thought about leaving, packing my bags and disappearing. But every time I looked at them, at the smug way Samantha walked into a room now, at the way Daniel avoided my eyes, I felt something stronger than sadness. I felt rage, and with rage came clarity. If they thought they could betray me, break me, and then live happily ever after, they were wrong. So very, very wrong. The breaking point came one rainy evening. I had been sitting in the dark, watching the rain streak down the windows, when I heard Daniel on the phone again. His voice was low, hushed. "Yeah, she's cracking. Don't worry, it's only a matter of time." My heart slammed against my ribs. Only a matter of time. Until what? Until I left? Until they could finally be together openly? I walked into the room. He froze, his phone slipping from his hand. "You know," I said calmly, "I've been patient. I've been quiet. I've let you lie to my face, both of you. But that ends tonight." He opened his mouth, but I raised my hand. "Save it. I don't need to hear another word." And in that moment, I decided I wasn't just going to survive this betrayal. I was going to burn their little fantasy to the ground. But the way I chose to do it, that's the part that still shocks even me. Revenge doesn't come in a single spark. It grows slowly, like embers fanned into a flame. For weeks, I let those embers burn inside me until they became a wildfire I couldn't contain. Samantha and Daniel thought they had won. They thought I'd crumble quietly, that I'd disappear while they built their shiny little life together. But they underestimated me. I didn't want to just leave them behind. I wanted them to feel the weight of their betrayal. To know that they hadn't just broken my heart, they had ignited a storm that would swallow them whole. And so, I began to plan. The first step was simple: patience. I pretended to forgive. I stopped yelling, stopped accusing, stopped demanding answers. Instead, I smiled. I cooked dinner. I asked Samantha to come over for wine nights again, just like old times. Daniel looked at me suspiciously, but he didn't question it. Samantha was slower to thaw, but eventually she let her guard down too. They thought I was healing. In reality, I was sharpening my knives. The second step was information. I knew Samantha's weaknesses. I knew her insecurities, her childhood wounds, the secrets she had whispered to me on drunken nights when she thought I'd guard them forever. I also knew Daniel's weaknesses, his pride, his ego, his desperate need to look successful even when he was drowning. So I used them. I whispered seeds of doubt into Daniel's ear. Sam told me she still isn't sure what she wants. I watched the paranoia creep into his face, watched him question her devotion, and to Samantha I confided fake worries. Daniel's been distant. Sometimes I think he regrets everything. I saw the panic flash in her eyes, the fear that maybe she wasn't as secure in his love as she thought. I didn't need to lift a finger. They began to unravel each other. The third step was the masterpiece. Daniel's father had passed years ago, leaving behind a decent inheritance that Daniel was supposed to manage wisely. Spoiler, he didn't. He gambled it away in bad investments, desperate to look like the man of the house with big dreams and no follow-through. Samantha didn't know, but I did. One afternoon, I accidentally left some bank statements out where Samantha could see them. I made sure the numbers were circled, the dwindling savings, the credit card debt, the overdraft fees. When I came back into the room, she was pale. "Ellie," she stammered, "does Daniel know about this?" I tilted my head as if weighing whether to say it. Then, softly, I murmured, "He doesn't want you to know." That night, I heard them arguing through the thin walls of her apartment when Daniel thought I was out. My phone recorder caught every word. "Why wouldn't you tell me you're broke?" Samantha screamed. "It's under control," Daniel snapped back. "Ellie's exaggerating." But the damage was done. The cracks widened. The fourth step was the finale, the one that would make their betrayal unforgettable. I knew Samantha's father, Mr. Hargrove, was a proud, wealthy man with a reputation to protect. Old money, old values, the type who believed in appearances above all else. He always liked me, always said I was the kind of woman a man builds a family with. So when he invited me to his 60th birthday party, I showed up in a dress that turned every head. Samantha hadn't planned on me being there. She had been avoiding me in public, worried I might cause a scene. But Mr. Hargrove insisted I sit beside him, and that's when it hit me. The perfect revenge. Because while Samantha was sneaking into my marriage, her father was unknowingly handing me the golden ticket, his approval. Weeks later, I set the final trap. I began spending more time with Mr. Hargrove. Coffee dates, lunches, conversations about business and life. He was lonely after his divorce, and I was suddenly very available. What started as polite companionship grew into something more. And when Samantha found out her father was seeing someone, she never imagined it was me. Not until the night I walked into the restaurant with him, holding his arm. The look on her face when she saw us together was priceless. Shock, rage, betrayal, all rolled into one. The same emotions she had carved into me, I now returned tenfold. Daniel was furious when he found out, of course. "You're disgusting," he spat, veins bulging in his neck. "Dating her father?" I smiled sweetly. "Funny. Didn't you think it was perfectly fine to date my best friend?" He had no comeback. And Samantha? She screamed. She cried. She called me names I won't repeat. But I stayed calm. Because while she had taken my husband, I had taken something she could never replace, her role in her own family. I wasn't just her ex-best friend anymore. I was her soon-to-be stepmother. The wedding was small but elegant. Mr. Hargrove insisted on sparing no expense. Samantha sat in the front row, her face twisted in disbelief as she watched me walk down the aisle in a gown of ivory silk. Daniel wasn't invited, of course, but word got back to him, and when he realized what I had done, when he realized I had outplayed them both, he lost his mind. That was the moment I knew my revenge was complete. I hadn't just taken back my power. I had flipped their betrayal into something they'd never escape. Every family gathering, every holiday, every mention of my name would remind them of what they had done. And yet, even as I smiled through the wedding photos, part of me wondered, had I gone too far? Because revenge, no matter how sweet, always comes with consequences, and mine were just beginning. I wish I could say that everything ended like a fairy tale, that karma neatly tied up the loose ends with a big red bow, and that I walked away with nothing but peace in my heart. But the truth is more complicated. Real life never wraps up as cleanly as the movies or those internet stories we scroll through before bed. The aftermath of my revenge was a strange mixture of satisfaction, heartbreak, and consequences I hadn't fully considered. At first, the high of victory was intoxicating. Watching Amelia's face when she realized I had outmaneuvered her, seeing her lose everything she thought she had gained, was pure vindication. For once, I didn't feel like the naive girl who trusted too easily. I felt like the woman who took control of her own story. People in our circle whispered, "Of course." They always do. The gossip spread like wildfire, how the betrayed wife turned into the stepmother of her husband's mistress. Some found it hilarious. Others called it cruel. But none of them knew the truth of what I had endured, the nights I had cried myself to sleep, the years of loyalty thrown away in one night of betrayal. But here's the thing I didn't expect. Power comes with a price. Once the dust settled, once Amelia moved out of our neighborhood with her head hung low and my ex-husband tried to save whatever scraps of dignity he had left, I was left staring at my own reflection, and the woman I saw was not the same as the one who had begun this story. For weeks I asked myself, had I gone too far? Was I any better than them? Revenge had tasted sweet, yes, but it also carried a bitterness I hadn't anticipated. Late at night, when the house was quiet, I replayed everything. Her laughter in my living room, his lies, my moment of triumph. And in the silence afterward, I wondered, did I win, or did I simply lose differently? Still, I can't lie. There was a certain peace in knowing Amelia could never erase what I did. I had rewritten the ending of our friendship, of my marriage, of the narrative where I was the victim. And while I don't encourage anyone to follow in my footsteps, I can't deny that the control, the agency it gave me, was empowering in ways I never thought possible. One afternoon, months later, I bumped into Amelia at the grocery store. Her face was pale, her smile thin, and for the first time in years, she couldn't look me in the eye. It wasn't gloating that filled me then. It was closure. I realized I no longer needed her apology. I no longer needed his explanations. My story had already reached its conclusion, and maybe that's the strange gift of betrayal. It shatters you, but if you pick up the pieces carefully, you can rebuild into something stronger. I wasn't the same Sarah who had once laughed carelessly over coffee with her best friend, or believed in forever promises from her husband. I was someone sharper, wiser, and maybe a little scarred. So if you're still listening to me now, I want to ask you, what would you have done? Would you have burned it all down like I did? Or would you have walked away quietly, carrying the pain with you? Because in the end, revenge isn't about justice, it's about survival. And for me, becoming my best friend's stepmother wasn't just revenge, it was rebirth. But tell me, if you were in my shoes, would you call it victory? Or just another kind of loss?